All right, folks. Good afternoon, and welcome to another Recovery Live. C4 Innovations created Recovery Live a number of years ago now to fully support and engage the behavioral health community with a focus on peers, peer support, recovery, and really the powerful impact peers, whether we're working collaboratively together with other peer-based organizations or we're integrating into clinical care teams as equally qualified and competent colleague. We want to make sure that we get that message out there, and we do this to facilitate these critical services, supports, and interactions. C4 has and will continue to bring us top-tier speakers, interesting and challenging issues, and creative strategies, and the knowledge that will help peers and non-peers alike in improving the lives of others to really achieve a satisfying and productive life in their communities. We at C4 Innovations, or C4 for short, are committed to advancing recovery, wellness, and housing stability for people who are marginalized. We are absolutely committed to reducing disparities and achieving equitable outcomes. And we engage, support, and partner with service organizations, with communities, with systems, with states, with tribes and territories. And we do that to develop, test, and implement research-based, evidence-based, best practice solutions that are all person-centered, recovery-oriented, and importantly, trauma-informed. And you can learn more about the work that C4 does by visiting our website at c4innovates.com. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, if you are on social media at all. Now, Recovery Live events are really interactive, and you get to engage directly with the speakers and each other through the live chat box. And we really encourage the use of that chat box. The speakers are going to share some of their initial thoughts, and then we're going to be answering and posing. We'll be posing your questions to the speakers, and they'll be the ones answering. Audience members are all in a listen-only mode, and you can introduce yourselves, and we really, again, encourage us to pose questions, share ideas and resource links, or even let us know about the tech difficulties if you're experiencing any of them by simply typing that into the chat box. And to access chat, you just click the word chat on your screen, and that chat box should pop out. You can resize it if you need to. You can drag it to the side so it stays up and mostly out of the way for you. But we really hope that you'll jump in and get busy in the chat. Today's event is going to last about 1 hour. It's being recorded. We'll share that link with registrants after this event is complete. It's also going to be on the C4 YouTube channel that's listed on the slide. And there's a lot of really good stuff there. So, please, if you're inclined, take a moment and check that out. And if as you're listening to what's happening today and what the speakers are sharing, and you feel like your organization might benefit or need some technical assistance around this, or frankly, any other topic, just email us at training@c4innovates.com. Again, training@c4innovates.com. And we're happy to discuss your needs. We'll brainstorm some strategies and possible solutions. We'll work together with you to determine the very best technical assistance possible that we can put together to meet your individual needs. Now, I mentioned earlier that C4 and these Recovery Live events work to bring you top-tier experts to provide the input and expertise on a whole bunch of different topics. And today is again no exception. And the three speakers lined up for today have some incredibly impressive backgrounds and service bios. I mean that. I am excited to introduce all the speakers for today. Let me start with Cheryl Gagne, who is a senior associate at C4 Innovations. And Cheryl develops and delivers training interventions to meet the learning needs of diverse groups of healthcare providers and behavioral health and public health programs in the United States and abroad. Cheryl directs a training program for Massachusetts addiction professionals and serves as a subject matter expert, trainer, and technical assistance provider for substance use, mental health, and recovery initiatives. She also develops skill-based curricula for providers, including peer workers. You'll recognize Cheryl's work really quickly when you take a look at the SAMHSA core competencies for peer workers. That's something that Cheryl developed and led and completed. Next up, Amani Myers. And her bio is really, it's fantastic, but Amani is an amazing person. Amani is an author and public speaker. She began her life as a ward of the state, and her childhood experiences in foster care really drive her commitment to help others realize their potential and break cycles of generational poverty. As part of the National Urban Fellows Program, Amani was placed at the California Endowment in Oakland, California, where she worked on the My Brother's Keeper initiative for young boys and men of color. Amani previously worked with the U.S. Children's Bureau as a child welfare policy consultant. She was a 2014 Foster Youth Internship Program participant with the Congressional Coalition on Adoption Institute and a White House intern for Domestic Policy Council's Office of Urban Affairs, Justice, and Opportunity. Amani is awesome, and we are thrilled to have her here today. And finally, Daryl McGraw, who is a recovery specialist at Seaport Innovations, but Daryl is so much more than that. He's a certified addictions counselor, a recovery support specialist, and a criminal justice professional extraordinaire. He focuses on supporting people experiencing addiction and overcoming obstacles upon release from jail or prison. Daryl was the program director for the Yale University Department of Psychiatry, and he was also the director of the Office of Recovery Community Affairs for Connecticut's Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. All right, on to what you're all here today for. And we're going to deviate a little bit from the sort of the standard format that many of you who've been here before would recognize as part of Privy Live. Today, we're going to have the speakers share a conversation about resilience and recovery through the holidays and the winter seasons, rather than a presentation. And the speakers are going to start out responding to an opening question, and then we're going to use questions and comments from all of you to expand, to dive deeper into particular areas, and ultimately, we hope to provide you all with some insight and strategies to address any behavioral health challenges that may arise during the holidays and the winter season. Now, we're all going to be monitoring the chat to inform our speakers and allow them to address the challenges and concerns and thoughts of all of you. So without further ado, let's get started. And my speakers, here is that kickoff question. We often hear that the winter season, and especially the time around holidays, can be challenging and really difficult for many people. Can each of you talk about why this topic interested you, your own experiences with seasonal and holiday challenges, and then any strategies you've incorporated to both carve out the time you're going to need and then addressing the challenges that you may be facing? And I'm happy to repeat that question if we need to. Just let me know. And any one of you is invited to be the first to respond.
Stephen, I can go ahead and take that question first. I'm Cheryl Gagne. I've got involved in recovery very young, over 34 years ago. Really started thinking about how I was going to manage these chronic health conditions of both addiction and bipolar disorder at the time. It's probably not bipolar disorder, but a mental health condition. And, you know, early on, my activities were all kind of high-risk, novel experiences. That's what kept me going and kept me buoyant. And the challenge around this time of year were twofold. One is, you know, self-care is an investment of time. And typically, not this year, but most years, this is a time of year where you're really hectic. There's work, there's shopping, there's family gatherings, there's this, there's that, you know, there's a lot of activities. And for many of us, what gets sacrificed when we're busy are those like core things that help. Like for me, kind of the heart and soul of my self-care is my sleep schedule. Like I've gotten really It took me decades to find out how important it is, but it is really important. And I really have to bring some effort into that. It's so easy to one more episode, right? Or just let me listen to, it's so easy to throw that off. So sleep, and especially again, this time of year, I'm living in the great Northeast. We have 14 inches of snow out my window right now. In addition to sleep, like sun is really important. And that's the other challenge this time of year. We only have a really short window of time. And typically it's during the workday, but I've really learned to schedule times outside, like put that in my calendar. And the one thing that helps me with that, let me show you, okay? Because this is my support for getting outside as often as I need to, is Mr. Iggy Pop, who looks very sleepy right now because we've been out in the snow. But again, this is, keeps me, I need the sunlight. We have very little of it, and to be very deliberate about getting time. So I found like the real basics, like this time of year, maybe more than ever, a little more deliberate self-care. Yeah, so I'm going to let others respond to that question. I certainly have more to say about it.
Awesome, Cheryl. Thank you. Cheryl or Amani?
I can follow after Cheryl. As biscuits and gravy ended up just kind of stealing the show a little bit. But hi, everyone. It's good to see everyone and to be here with you all. But yeah, this is a really important question. I think that I experience around actually major holidays as someone who grew up in the foster care system and was disconnected from my family very early. I would say that the holidays have been something that have been a struggle. The other thing is that at the age of 20, I was diagnosed with PTSD, major depression, and panic anxiety. And it was one of the first times in my life where I was diagnosed with something like this. And I wasn't necessarily sure what was going on. I didn't understand how the trauma that I experienced at a very young age, that I thought that I was sort of overcoming, but was actually suppressing, was something that was actually taking over my life. And I ended up going off to college and experiencing an anxiety attack, and didn't necessarily know what to do. I ended up going to the hospital and receiving help. And it was like one of the first times that I had experienced something like this. And so when we talk about recovery, I would say that as a young person who is a product of the crack epidemic, as my parents were involved in substance abuse, I would say that I've been an extension of that. And so for my self-care, it's been really, really important for me to really take care of myself in terms of making sure that I am seeing my therapist. I think that many times a lot of us have not had the opportunity to take care of ourselves in that way and to be able to talk to people. I think that especially when you've experienced trauma or have experienced things where you were left to be voiceless, you don't realize that you have a voice and that your experiences have meaning. And so being able to really talk through my experiences, I would say is been a thing that I've been doing throughout my lifetime. I think one of the things that's been helpful for me, because I realized that, I've had pretty much a lot of success and accomplishments in my professional life, but when it comes to, my personal life or my relationships, I find that I'm really struggling. And I think part of it is because of the experiences that I faced. And so being able to face it head on, it's been really, really important for me to tune into myself. And I find that a lot of us have learned very young that, that self-care was something that was selfish, but that's not true at all. I realized that it's important for me to take care of myself so that I can help take care of others. And so my self-care routine really comes in with really practicing affirmations over myself. The other day, I actually wrote out a bunch of sticky notes and put them on my mirror. And, with the water and everything, with the shower, sometimes they fall off. But I am intentional about speaking those affirmations over myself every day, because I realize that the holidays are just a struggle. And I would say that one of the things that has been more recent is I lost my little sister, who actually ended up taking her life, and was someone who didn't have an opportunity to stay in recovery. And so my life journey has really been about how can I honor her, and not just honor her, but how can I honor others who have not been able to see that recovery is something that is a lifelong journey. Healing is a lifelong journey. We've all experienced things that have been in our lives that have been things that have been outside of our control. And so just as much as that we didn't just get up and stand and start walking, it took steps. I tried to think about my healing and my self-recovery in that way. And so one of the objects that I have is my journal. As Stephen mentioned, is that I'm a writer, and I found out very early in life that, you know, I could process my emotions through the way that I write. I find that when I'm angry or upset, it takes me a little bit to process. And so when I write things out, it makes it so much easier. And so this journal has an affirmation on it, and it says, "You're off to great places. Today is your day. Your mountain is waiting, so get on your way." And so every single time I feel down, or if I feel I'm in a place of not being able to emotionally regulate, I turn to my journal and I turn to myself.
Amani, that was awesome. Thank you. It was just a great way to open. Okay, Daryl. Those are big
Hey,
shoes to
listen.
fill.
Hey, Steve and everybody, man. Monty brought so much heat, man. I ain't know what to do, man. I was about to walk out the room. It's good to be in here. I see we got 126 people in the building. You know, I see some people in recovery. If you're from recovery, throw it in the chat box. Let us know that you're in recovery. And this is a hard time for us, but those, you know, this is the time for the resilience. I always call this this is like varsity, right? This is the varsity team. You know, only the strong stand up, man. We take this time and we show up. Yeah, you love the shirt right here, Pulp Fiction. I wore it for Steven because he a movie buff. You know how we do it. So, yeah, I'm just glad to be here, you know, and talk to, you know, just have this conversation because, you know, I remember, first of all, I'm Darryl McGraw, criminal justice advocate, person in long-term recovery. That means I haven't used a substance since May 7, 2007. I see we got some people in the room that are in recovery. Shout your date out if you so choose. If you even got day one, just hit the chat box. Let us know that you're in recovery and that we're all standing here together. I'm also a survivor of PTSD and also the criminal justice system. You know, so for me, having spent holidays incarcerated and Christmases and New Year's and know what that's like to be in a cell and then to now be out here and, you know, and to be free. Sometimes you may be free, physically free, but not necessarily feeling free in this environment. We waited a long time to get out here and only to find out that things just ain't as what we thought they was going to be like, you know, and if you can relate to that, just let me know you can relate to that. So for me, I had to find things that made me feel good. And for me, everybody brought something, and I brought two things. Steven said I could bring one, but I don't listen. I don't follow the rules too well, right? So I got a little sand, and a shell. But this is, if you guys can see this, this is where I go. This is my beach. This is where I go to think. This is where I go to talk to God. This is where I go and spend time when, you know, when I need to be alone. So the beach is the spot where I go in the winter. Like Cheryl said, you know, we're in the Northeast, right? So we got a lot of snow right now. So I couldn't go down there and get a full jar of sand. I had to borrow some sand from somebody. I got to give it back, right? So, but just thinking about that, I'm hoping that we can have this dialogue. I'm hoping that we can talk more about, you know, what do you do? Because this is a we thing, not a me thing. So we coming together to talk about what do you do? You know, in these times, I know that people in recovery, we found out easily that, you know, the holiday time for some reason is a time of reflection, and sometimes not always a good reflection. People like to remind you of what you did on the holiday time, like Thanksgiving. People like to come over and say, "Hey, Darryl, I remember when you stole that TV." I'm like, that was 20 years ago. You still talking about that TV? So a lot of times we don't like to come together with family because they still only remember the bad things and not the good. That's why I found my own tribe, like with Cheryl and Steven and Armani and the rest of the C4 crew. I found my tribe, so I'm always not reminded of the good things. We progress to to these new frontiers. We're making great memories. So I'm gonna stop there.
Daryl, it was just, you bring such energy, brother. I mean it. It's,
Let's
it's
get
always,
it. Let's go, man.
that's right. It's always just such a pleasure to have you here. And let me just, there's a number of different questions, but let me just check in with the speakers around this idea of connection. Cheryl, do you have yeah, I'll stop. Let you.
Okay, because that was a word I've been thinking about. I loved Amani, going right to the issue of trauma and the fact that for many of us in recovery, that is kind of has disrupted a lot of meaningful connections with families, friends, even our histories, our stories. And I do try to be very deliberate about connection. I'm a solitary person. Most of my activities that I enjoy are, they're one solitary things. However, even being somewhat solitary, I need to feel connected. I am human, and so, connecting, with myself through kind of activities, being in touch with who I am and what's going on with me. I try to be connected with others. One way I do it, and this is a hobby, I've been doing it for years. I knit hats for the, people who are living on here in Boston. You can't have too many, tooks. And so I make a bunch of these and, I've given dozens. It's just knitted with love, and, knitting is can be a very Zen activity. So there's a real connection there. And I think, in terms of higher purpose and meaning, I think my, spirituality is a weird hybrid of all kinds of things that have woven through my life, from everything from, celebrating with the Advent calendar, looking forward to the Christmas day. That's part of my heritage, but also, meditation and yoga. So wonderful. I mean, and so that connected with myself, with others through activity, and with, a higher purpose and meaning. And that seems to help me stay resilient, stable, more buoyant. Yeah.
Hello, everyone.
Amani, go ahead.
Hi, I'm sorry. My internet went out.
Oh,
We have like a little bit of storms going on over here, so I've been trying to connect.
you're on the phone.
So I missed the last question, so I just wanted to apologize for that.
So Amani, not a problem at all. We were actually kind of building, we had Daryl share a minute. Daryl brought up the heat in the room. And Cheryl had building off of your opening, just a quick discussion around connection and why that is important to folks who are in recovery. And I'm happy to have you chime in, and same for Daryl. So any thoughts about connection, Amani?
Sure. I would say that connection and belonging are two of the most important things in order for people to really thrive, and it really builds on the person's resilience. And I would say that as someone who did not have stable connections growing up, I would say that it was difficult to sort of process through that. But I also, on the other hand, understood the importance of wanting and knowing connections. And so early on, I learned that it was important to connect with other people. And as an extrovert, I'm a people person, and that's just who I am. And so for me, I've seen how connections have really helped me along my journey in building my stability. And I think that for a lot of people who are in recovery, who have maybe had stable relationships or stable people in their lives, or people who may have walked away, I would say that connection at this point is just truly important. And I also would say that, especially during the holidays and, with COVID, I think that with the rise of mental health and the rise of isolation, this is the first time that a lot of people have and are experiencing what many of us have been experiencing for years. And so for me, I have found out like this year, along with so many others, about the power of connection and the value of it and how to really be innovative with it, because, connection is not just about, connecting, over the phone, but a lot of us also need that physical connection. And it's really difficult to do that in this time of COVID. And for me, I'm from Boston and I'm living in California, and I haven't seen my family in over a year. And it has been really difficult, I would say, to not necessarily be able to have that. But one of the things I am grateful for has been the people in my life, along with my animals. I would say that they bring a piece of connection for me. I think that we sometimes don't always value the uniqueness and the importance that animals bring to us. And so for me, it's really been about looking at my life and finding ways that I can not just only connect with myself, but connect with others that are around me, and also connecting with those that typically we don't always connect with, people that are living on the streets. I live in an area where I see that, and just being able to look into their eyes and to say, I see you, how are you doing, good morning, that's a connection point. And so it's just about finding ways to connect in our own unique ways, but also challenging ourselves to go further.
Amani, it's just incredible. And I'm going to go to Cheryl momentarily, but I just wanted to chime in. I think a lot of people would label me an extrovert. I actually am an introvert that has learned, through my addiction and my mental health challenges, to be a really good chameleon. And I can engage with anybody that I need to, because most of my life I've been forced into those situations. But for the most part, I do tend to isolate. And what has been my most important self-care and my most important return to feeling resilient, even though I really don't like that word, because every time I hear it, I expect more stuff to fall on my shoulders. But it is about my animals and how important it is having that, both the connection and that sort of that unconditional love that comes from your animals, and the responsibility. I can remember in my past feeling very suicidal, having suicidal ideation. And what stopped me was that I had to care for my pets, and that, what would they do without me? And so in a really difficult time for me, my self-care, my resilience really was bolstered and given back to me by my interaction with my animals. So anyway, Daryl.
Thank you, brother. Thank you for saying that. I mean, that's very powerful. And I think that, I see Brenda is in the building. She's rocking with the corrections. Senior over there in the corrections, we got a lot of people behind those cells and that are going through some rough times right now. Just let them know that we're out here doing it. We're out here, we out here standing up for those and being a voice for those that cannot use their voice today. I think that, connection is key, because for me, having been in the street and, addiction and connection to like, you can't make those friendly connections in the street because there's a different relationships. And then when you go to prison, there's not a lot of connection making there either. It's not the place where you make a lot of friends. So it's a lot of it's more disconnection. So then when I found this life that I call recovery, it became all about connections. And those connections became important to me and valuable. And it wasn't about what you could give me or what I could give you. It was about like, just holding the space for each other. And I thought that became more powerful. And, you know, to have a relationship like with Stephen, you know, and just, you know, we're not doing any business, like, for, you know, for lack of, you know, we're just genuine friends. And, you know, it took a long time to find a genuine friend. And now I have them all over the world, right? I have them all over the world, and I'm very fortunate. And I think that, you know, the lifestyle that I lived for many years robbed me of the ability to connect with people, especially when I'm a people person, right? I didn't know I was a people person. I used to walk around with this mean look and, tough exterior, because that kept me safe. So the art of disconnection, I'll say again, was a skill that I learned. So I had to relearn how to connect with people and be genuine and authentic, right? And that's something that we end up having to use. It's still, I guess, for me, it makes me stumble a little bit because it's a skill that I'm still learning, right? So I really appreciate the conversation. I'm ready to turn it back up a couple of notches, man. Let's go. Let's just talk about some food or something, man. Y'all getting me, I'm almost got emotional, man. I got to get back into the gear. Y'all start talking about connections, man. Let's go. Let's get it.
So, Daryl, listen, thank you, because I know I understand that disconnect, and I understand very well how we are in recovery, sort of learning how to do these new things. And you and I have had this conversation before. Sometimes I don't feel like I'm so much in recovery as I actually am in discovery. And these are the things that, when I was in active addiction and I was really struggling with my mental health challenges, all of this sort of, goals and objectives that were important to me, ethics, morals, being a good friend, a trustworthy friend, an honest partner. All those things I couldn't do in active addiction because of the nature of the disease, became super important in recovery. And so when I listen to somebody like Daryl or Imani or Cheryl talk about their own discoveries in recovery, it just reinforces that this is discovery for many of us. So let me pull up another question. I got one that I think is really important, and I think a lot of people are going to struggle with this, and I did certainly. During my first year of recovery, one of my cousins invited me to a family gathering where I knew that there would be a lot of drug and alcohol use. I can see Daryl already getting ready for this one. I told him I wasn't coming, and he insisted that I should be okay by now to come around the family members who did indulge. I decided not to go, and he did get over it. But what advice would you give people entering recovery about holiday gatherings? And importantly, what advice would you give to their families too? Who wants to tackle it?
Ladies, y'all want to go? I mean, it don't matter. Let's get it. I'll take a stab at that. Well, for me, is really like, I've been in recovery for 13 years now, right? And it's crazy. We go to these events every year, pre-COVID. We would, we get together, me and my friends who I've known, we grew up together. And if someone passes away, we all end up coming together for one reason or another, whether it be a birthday or a death, we get together. And one person in particular always offers me a drink every time. And I'm like, man, I'm good. I want a soda, man. I'm good. And he's like, man, you still don't drink? What's the problem? Like, and people sometimes get offended, and people like, but I say all that to say this. Right? We move our own, we manage our own selves. I manage me, right? Because it'll be me in that jail cell when I have that drink, right? Because it don't end at the drink. My drinking begins and ends with police activity, right? So let's be clear. It always ends with me being on that metal bunk talking about how did I get here? I already read that book twice, 3 times to be truly honest, right? So I already know. So I can't go on what you think, and I'm not gonna never. One of the gifts with this life is that we'll never have to conform to somebody else's behavior or how you feel about me. You didn't like or you talked about me when I drank and I drugged. Now you're gonna talk about me because I don't drink and I drug. So that's okay, because you know what? I wake up with a couple more dollars in my pocket today than I did when I did, you know what I mean? And I don't have to worry about the police being after me. But most importantly, I have that sense of self. I like waking up who I am when I go to bed. You know, I like who I see today. Like, I like what I see today. And that's what we encourage those. So therefore, they got to deal with it. That's not my issue, because those that are offering you that drink or that are inviting you to drink are the ones that will talk about you when you screw this thing up. Man, I'd rather them just be standing there staring like he's still on drink. Nope, I don't. I'm good. I'm good.
That's a good question, Stephen, and thank you, Daryl. I just had this conflict with an old friend of mine whose kid, is in treatment again for, opioids and meth. But alcohol is also part of the story. It's been in the mix, marijuana as well. He got a pass from the halfway house to go to their home for Thanksgiving, which, independent of COVID, I thought that was not a great idea to begin with, but they served alcohol. They were planning to serve alcohol. And I said, that's ridiculous. Oh, I asked him, he said he doesn't mind. You're his parents, you know what I mean? Create a safe environment. Maybe not for the rest of his life, but come on, in his first year, he's had a horrible time of it. It'd just be so loving to have an environment where he could feel safe. And I've done that before, said to people, no, people are, is it okay that I drink? What are you going to say? I mean, I guess. Yeah. So I don't know. I wouldn't put somebody, if I loved them and they were part of my family, I wouldn't put them in that environment. I just couldn't. Yeah. So that was the conflict. We're still, in disagreement about it, but that's how friends are. Yeah.
And Stephen, just to say that's going to happen, man. That's going to happen. And, Cheryl said,
yeah.
Real quickly, like, what are you going to say? When people ask me now, because even when we work and we get these really great jobs, they're like, oh, don't ask Daryl out because he doesn't drink. I can still go out. I'm just don't exclude me from activities because I don't drink and drug. You know what I mean? So sometimes we don't get invited, and we have to be okay with that too. Yeah. But when people say to me, well, you mind if I drink? I'm like, well, what kind of drinker are you? Because I need to know. If you're asking me, because am I gonna have to carry you out? Are you one of those fighting drunks that are we gonna get in a fight if we start? Because I need to know this stuff pre. If you're asking me, is it okay for you to drink? Because I'm not asking permission to not drink. If you ask me permission to drink, then I need to know what kind of drinker you are. So that would be my next question.
Perfectly stated, both of you. Amani, I know you've got something. You're on mute. Get you off mute. Let me figure out what's going on for you. There we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, perfect.
Yep. Uh-oh. We lost you.
My apologies. Technology 2020, all goes hand in hand. I'm just rolling with it. But I was going to say, I want to speak from an experience that I just want to first say that I don't know exactly how it feels to be on the side of someone who is experiencing addiction in that way, because that hasn't necessarily been my struggle. But I will say that I have been surrounded by, I have a family. My entire family comes from that background, and so I've been involved in it, and so I understand. But I will say that as someone who has experienced trauma, I would say that this question still goes hand in hand, because at the end of the day, you have to understand what your triggers are. And being able to identify what your triggers are first, I would say is helpful in going in with the safety plan.
Yeah.
I know for me, in terms of going to family gatherings in general can be hard. And so for me, it's about developing a safety plan, because you're right, not everyone is going to understand. And it's about people being understanding of each other in people's journeys and people's struggles. And if you're identifying that this is a struggle that I have, this is something that I'm having a challenging time in, I would love your support in not providing these certain things while I'm here. I would say that that's an act of love. And so I think that for me, going in, I've always had to evaluate where am I at emotionally, what are my triggers, and how am I going to address that when they come up? Because I can sometimes assume that people understand where I'm coming from, but people may not understand where I'm coming from because they may not have had my experience. And so it's about me having to communicate what is it that I need. And so for me, I think that having even just getting practical about having a time frame of how long you're going to stay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what room you're going to sit in. Are you going to bring a friend with you? What are some ways that you can distract yourself so that you don't have that urge in case those things are present? And I think that it's really about people really getting to a place of understanding each other and meeting each other where they are at. And I don't think that we do a good enough job about doing that. And I don't think it's because that's not our intention, but I think it's because sometimes we are so absorbed with our own problems and issues that sometimes it feels difficult to support somebody else in what they're going through. Mm-hmm. But I think that if we have a stance of really being mindful and really being present with our emotions and what's coming up for us, I think that that's really key. And so anytime I go to a family gathering and I know that there's going to be like some high intense emotions, I try to come up with a plan of action so that I can really feel supported through that process. And it's about sometimes having that conversation beforehand so that you know exactly what you're getting yourself into. But I do think that I saw somewhere in the comments that someone said that, you know, non-addicts just don't understand. And I would agree. And I think that as someone who is in that place, it's really about me taking the time to really listen and to understand where that person is coming from, because, you know, we're really in this together. And so for me, I would say setting boundaries for yourself, setting boundaries for the other person, coming up with a safety plan, coming up with a time about how long you're going to be there, who you're going to bring with you, and what are you going to do? What are you going to do for yourself before you go, and then while you're there, and then how are you going to recover? Because I think that's what's really important.
Beautiful.
I think Stephen, it's about accommodation too, right? And respect. You know, Armani brought up a real point, and I just wanted to point it out. Like, you know, I've been in relationships with people who are active, right? And love is there, right? You got family members who are active, right? And you're in a different place now. You're different. People think that you're different because you don't use, you know. And I had to acknowledge the fact that they weren't going to stop selling alcohol when I stopped drinking. They weren't going to stop selling drugs when I stopped using. So like Armani said, you got to have that safety plan. You got to have that strategy. And I love the fact that you made the correlation to trauma, right? Because there's some traumatic things, you know. I've been in the hood. I'm from the hood. So now I go back there. Things still are triggering too, right? So we got to always acknowledge, and that's why we got to be the experts on ourselves and really know how we want to be treated and where we want to be at, right? You know, and I think that, you know, all of this is why this dialogue is so important, because, you know, those situations still arise. Situations still arise, and people are still going to do what they do. But we need to be able to have that exit strategy on how we're going to handle those situations. So I really appreciate, you know, the conversation and those questions. And I see you guys in the chat box. I'm not responding, but I see you. So thank you. We shout on you out, man. Keep it going. Keep it coming. Lee's kicking us out in 15 minutes. Lee said we only got 15 minutes. So let's get it popping.
So,
yeah. And if I can quickly add to that really quickly, because I understand too that sometimes in the moments we do things that we did not anticipate that we were going to do, and we end up doing it. And I think it's also about really practicing being gentle with ourselves, because mistakes happen. And if something has been a coping strategy for a lifetime or for years, sometimes we can go back and we can redo that process. And so I understand that in recovery, that sometimes mistakes happen and sometimes people go back. And it's about really supporting yourself and reminding yourself that you're still loved, that you're not a disappointment, that that you acknowledge what happened, and again, you find the tools and the people around you that can really help you to know that you're okay and that you're on your way. And so I just want to remind everybody, especially during this time, to really, really practice being gentle with ourselves.
Yeah. I do want to echo that, Amani. I think it's really hard when we start thinking about self-care and, apply perfectionism to it and expect that we're going to be, perfect in that. And awareness sometimes comes slowly. What we know about ourselves and about what we need, sometimes that blanket gets pulled very slowly, off our eyes, and we can only do what we know. And life is about learning, right? So one thing that I've learned to practice actually just pretty recently is it's a meditation, but it's around self-compassion, right? In recognizing, maybe feelings that I don't like or beliefs that I have, is to really have compassion for myself in that situation. And that with compassion, acceptance and compassion, it's a lot easier to begin to, do it differently than when we're really, cracking the whip or being very, very harsh with ourselves. So I'm glad you brought up that kind of compassion and self-forgiveness, and it's another learning opportunity, right? It's only when we really struggle that we
Right.
learn something.
I think I like to say I'm perfectly imperfect, right? I'm perfectly imperfect, right? And I just wanted to say, you reminded me, I was stuck on, I had this thought. We were like I was that drinking or that using is that person's coping mechanism too. Like that's how they choose to cope with their stress, their situation. So, and I don't have a right to tell them that. So I really can only work with what I'm working with. I believe that, I only can put those expectations on myself, because it's been my experience. Any expectations that I've put on people or outside of myself tend to been a resentment, and many times waiting to happen. So I can only put the expectation on myself and not others. So I really appreciate that, man. You guys are killing it, man.
Ryan, and I will just chime in here, sort of, in support, Amani, of everything that you've said, particularly around being gentle to yourself, forgiving yourself, being able to sort of not just ignore, but to compartmentalize and set aside the internal dialogues that often happen to many of us in recovery when we're struggling, and that somehow we're not worthy, we're not, all of the baggage that I certainly deal with. And it is a return. Daryl said earlier, I like this guy that I see today. And it is the first time in my life, honestly, where I'm able to look in the mirror today and not absolutely hate the guy looking back at me. I actually kind of like that guy. And it's a long journey to get there. And it's very easy for me to be knocked right back into, I hate that guy looking back. So it is intentional and required that you practice this, and part of that, I think the most important thing for me has been being gentle to myself. So again, Amon, thank you just for sharing that. Daryl, always amazing, and Cheryl, I just every time you speak, I learn something else. So I'm just really grateful. Let me pull up another question. We've got some really interesting stuff. I think this one just kind of, it gets us where we're at right now, and I'm just conscious of the time. So this question is set up this way. Practicing self-care during the pandemic is essential. How do you balance and prioritize caring for yourself, caring for others, and then caring for the world around you?
This is a question I've been reflecting on. I think that for me, I would say that it's been difficult. I can't lie and say that it's been easy. But one of the things that I will say too is that I also realize that I practice self-care even when I don't think I'm practicing self-care. And so for me, the way that I've tried to think about it is it really comes down to my schedule and how I prioritize my day. And so for me, one of the things that I do is I wake up in the morning and I take my dog on a walk and I listen into an audiobook. And the audiobook that I'm listening to right now is called Calm in the Emotional Storm. And I find that it's helpful for me to walk. And in that, I'm taking care of myself, I'm taking care of my dog, and I'm also taking care of my emotional and mental. And so that's like 2 or 3 acts in an hour. And so from there, for me, it's about really trying to take it moment by moment and really learning the importance of mindfulness and really trying to be present in the things that I'm doing so that I'm doing them well. And it's not easy. But in the way that I live it out is through myself, is through, like I said, taking care of myself through these walks. And then I do it in my work. And then part of me trying to take care of the world is if I see someone that's, like I said, I have, there's a community here of people who don't have homes, but they collect cans and bottles. And so I collect the cans and bottles and I save them. And then when I see them, I give them to them. And that's a part of me trying to just try to show people that I'm there. I would say that it's something that I would say is a practice that I'm continually to hold, and I'm trying to continually, modify in my life. But I think it's just really about being intentional with what you're doing, and whether that's, taking care of yourself, giving yourself a bath, giving yourself, washing your face, brushing your teeth, getting out of the bed. Those are little moments of really stepping in and taking care of yourself. It doesn't have to be like this grandiose thing. It's really about what matters for you in that moment. And so for me, being able to help others helps me to know that, especially when I'm not having the best day, and I would say that today is a day that I'm not having the best day, I really want to be intentional about how I am reacting to the world and in the world while I'm here.
Fabulous. Daryl or Sherry?
I can go there. This is a difficult question because I have to say that I have been struggling with this too. It's very hard to connect with others during the pandemic. A lot of my kind of just even daily interactions have ceased due to quarantine issues. And when we could do socially distanced walks with friends, that was one thing. I do feel like that, this knitting and contributing products to Boston Healthcare for the Homeless feels like giving. The other piece is I've had a little extra money, like not a lot, but I've been able, I didn't go on vacation this summer and my niece didn't go to camp. So I had a little money that I could contribute, and that's felt good to contribute to. And I took care of things here in Boston for families who work in the hotel and restaurant businesses. So yeah, making donations. But I have to say, overall, I haven't really nothing has ever felt during this epidemic like balance. Like it's always so, I'm just out of whack. And you know what? So what? I think a lot of people are feeling that. And I think, yeah, we just have to do the best we can, you know.
I'll just say really quickly, like, I think my balance is unbalanced, right? Like, I rock like that, right? So, you know, just for me though, I really look at the fact that, you know, if I'm not right, I can't help others. I know that. I learned that lesson a long time ago. So I need to always be good with me in order for me to be able to give, even if if I gotta be a little good so I can give a little. If I'm good, then I can give more. But it really starts with me, and I'm just in a different place today. And, you know, just in the midst of this, we've shifted gears where food insecurity has been a major issue in our country. So we've been blessed to be part of the Farm the Families, and we've fed over 6,000 families within the last few months, like giving out boxes of food, masks on, and I mean like street dudes giving out, like dudes I used to be in the trenches selling drugs with now are lined up giving food out, man, and that has just been amazing. So it's just like we used to be on the crack block, now we're on the food block giving out meat and cheese and stuff, and that's been amazing to be a part of. So that's where I'm at.
You guys, thank you. Thank you all just for sharing, you know, what's most important. I've got one last question, and then you each got 30 seconds because we're coming up on the top of the hour. This is the question, and it was originally directed to Cheryl, but I think all three of you can just chime in as quickly as you can. What have you learned? This person is struggling with a consistent sleep schedule and a routine. What have you learned over the last decade that is most helpful for good quality sleep? Cheryl, 30 seconds.
So I don't know, just a schedule. I do use my phone to try to help me wind down. This is the time you get off devices. I don't always obey it, but I know when I do follow that schedule, I have a lot more freedom and able to fall asleep. And this likewise with my alarm clock getting me up in the morning. So I just, you know, value it and make it a priority. Not that I'm perfect. There are times I say one more episode, shut up. I'm doing it anyway, but.
Awesome. Amani, 30 seconds.
So I'm gonna speak from Calm the Emotional Storm really quickly. That's something that they're talking about is, you know, understanding your sleep schedule. And so one of the things that they say is that if you have difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep, they recommend that you just track your sleep-in, because sometimes people need more than 8 hours. Some people need more than 10 hours. I mean, less than 8 hours or more. And so it's about just really, they said for 2 weeks, do it in a non-judgmental way, and see how that, you know, because it affects all sorts of things. And so that's one of the things that I've been trying to do is really tracking my sleep schedule. But one of the things that really helps me is that I listen to, I have YouTube, and they have a meditation station that plays all night. And I play that every single night before I go to sleep. A salt lamp helps, taking a warm bath beforehand, a shower, and doing something soothing right before you go to bed.
Perfect, Amani. 30 seconds, Daryl.
Proper preparation prevents poor performance. Get a routine, shower, whatever it is, set that tone so your body already knows we are going to bed, right? It's just like a kid, right? Like you bath, shower, you know, not that for me, it doesn't work all the time because I'm always up, but it's a routine and I go right there. So when I get to the bed, it's like a landing strip. I land in there and I'm out. There's nothing else. I'm gone. Preparation prevents performance.
Team, we are at the end. I want to thank each one of you for just an incredible conversation. Honestly, it was fantastic. We are thrilled that all of you are able to be here. A special thanks to Amani, who came at a sort of a last-minute notice. And folks, listen, we hope you're going to join us for the January Recovery Live. That's going to be around supporting Black women's resilience and recovery. And we're going to explore and discuss the challenges and concerns and strategies to support and promote that. Before you run out to the rest of your workday, there's going to be a survey to pop up shortly. When we close this meeting room, it takes you about 3 minutes, and we do listen to your feedback. That's why Recovery Live is the way it is. Also, please consider reaching out to request training or technical assistance, or just to talk to the good folks from C4 anytime. And I want to thank all of you for joining today's session. Thanks again to some fabulous speakers, and I hope you all have a great rest of your afternoon. Thank you.
Bye, guys.